I am Alexandra, 28, a pediatric nurse who thought I had finally found happiness with Nathan, my architect fiancé. After 5 years of scrimping and saving, I had $50,000 for my dream wedding. What should have been the happiest celebration of our engagement turned into a nightmare when my father demanded I give every penny to my brother Maxwell. When I refused, his palm connected with my face in front of everyone. Little did he know what would happen next. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to family pressure. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Boston, I always knew my place in the family hierarchy. From the moment my younger brother Maxwell was born when I was 4 years old, it became clear that he was the golden child. My parents, Richard and Margaret Bennett, never tried to hide their favoritism. While Maxwell received lavish birthday parties, the newest gadgets, and constant praise, I learned to celebrate my achievements quietly, often alone. Alexandra, your brother needs these new soccer cleats. We will have to skip your science camp this summer, my mother would say, not even attempting to mask the inequity. This was the recurring theme throughout my childhood. Maxwell's wants always superseded my needs. When it came time for college, I knew better than to expect my parents' financial support. We need to save for Maxwell's education. He will probably get into an Ivy League school, my father explained when I brought up the topic during my senior year of high school. So I applied for every scholarship possible, took out student loans, and worked part-time at a local coffee shop to put myself through nursing school. Those years were exhausting. I would wake up at 5 in the morning for early shifts, attend classes all day, study until midnight, then start the cycle again. Meanwhile, Maxwell partied through his business degree at a private university, fully funded by our parents. Despite his mediocre grades and frequent academic probations, they never wavered in their support. After graduation, I secured a position as a pediatric nurse at Boston Children's Hospital. The work was demanding but fulfilling. I found purpose in comforting sick children and supporting worried parents through their darkest hours. My salary was modest, but I was determined to build financial independence. That is when I started my wedding fund. Even though I was not dating anyone seriously at the time, I knew that someday I wanted to get married without financial stress or dependence on anyone. Every month, I would deposit a portion of my paycheck into a separate savings account labeled Future Wedding. At first it was just $100, then $200, then more, as I received raises and bonuses. I cut corners everywhere, bringing lunch from home, sharing an apartment with 2 roommates, buying clothes from thrift stores. By the time 5 years had passed, I had saved $50,000. Then I met Nathan Taylor. Unlike previous men I had dated who were intimidated by my independence or tried to control me, Nathan appreciated my strength. As an architect at a respected firm, he understood the value of hard work and building something meaningful from the ground up. We connected immediately over our shared love of classic films and Sunday morning hikes. Within 6 months, I knew he was the one. "You are the most remarkable woman I have ever met," Nathan told me on our first anniversary as we picnicked in Boston Public Garden. "You have overcome so much, and instead of becoming bitter, you have become compassionate." What made our relationship even more special was Nathan's family. His parents, Harold and Elizabeth Taylor, welcomed me with genuine warmth from our first meeting. Elizabeth would call me regularly just to chat, and Harold always made sure to ask about my work, showing sincere interest in my career. After years of emotional neglect from my own parents, their kindness felt almost foreign. When Nathan proposed on a crisp autumn evening under a canopy of trees illuminated by fairy lights, I did not hesitate to say yes. As we began planning our future together, I proudly told him about my wedding fund. "You saved all that money yourself?" he asked, amazed. "Alexandra, that is incredible. But you know my parents have offered to help with the wedding costs too." "I know, and I appreciate that so much," I replied. "But this is something I need to do for myself. I have been planning this for years." Despite my strained relationship with my family, I still held on to the hope that, Maybe, just maybe, my engagement would be the turning point. Perhaps seeing me truly happy would help them recognize me as the capable, loving person I had become. So against my better judgment, I decided to invite them to our engagement party. "Are you sure about this?" Nathan asked gently when I told him. "I do not want you to be disappointed." "They are still my family," I said, though uncertainty gnawed at me. I need to at least give them the chance to be part of this. Little did I know how catastrophically wrong that decision would turn out to be. I spent weeks planning the perfect engagement party. We reserved a private dining room at Bellini's, an upscale Italian restaurant in downtown Boston, known for its elegant ambiance and exquisite cuisine. With its crystal chandeliers, white linen tablecloths, and panoramic views of the city skyline, it felt like the perfect setting to celebrate our love. The morning of the party, I woke up with butterflies in my stomach. Not just the excited kind, but anxious ones too. Nathan sensed my unease as I stood in front of the mirror smoothing down my silk champagne-colored dress for the 10th time. "You look beautiful," he said, wrapping his arms around my waist and meeting my eyes in the reflection. "Tonight is about us. No matter what happens with your family, remember that." I nodded, grateful for his understanding. "I just want everything to be perfect." "It already is," he assured me, kissing my temple softly. We arrived at the restaurant 2 hours early to oversee the final preparations. The florist had created stunning arrangements of white roses and eucalyptus that adorned each table. A string quartet was setting up in the corner, and the bartender was preparing our signature cocktails, elderflower spritz with a sprig of rosemary. Nathan's parents arrived first, Eleanor radiant in a navy blue dress, and Harold distinguished in his charcoal suit. They brought a beautifully wrapped gift and warm hugs. "We are so thrilled to officially welcome you to the family," Alexandra Eleanor said, holding both my hands in hers. "Nathan has never been happier, and we know that is because of you." Harold nodded in agreement. "You two are perfect for each other. We could not ask for a better partner for our son." Their genuine affection brought tears to my eyes. This was what family should feel like: supportive, loving, kind. As other guests began to arrive, colleagues from the hospital, Nathan's friends from architecture school, my few close friends, the room filled with laughter and congratulations. My best friend Alicia arrived with her husband bearing a bottle of champagne and an oversized card. "This place is gorgeous," she whispered, squeezing my arm. "You outdid yourself." "Thank you for coming," I said, genuinely grateful for her steady presence in my life. Alicia had been there through all my family drama, offering shoulders to cry on and straight talk when I needed it. At precisely 7:30, just as we were about to make our welcome speech, my parents and Maxwell walked in. My mother was overdressed in a floor-length gown, better suited for a formal gala. My father looked uncomfortable in his suit, and Maxwell wore an expression of barely concealed boredom. "Alexandra," my mother said, stiffly air-kissing my cheeks. "Congratulations." "Thank you for coming," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "It means a lot to me." My father handed me an envelope that I suspected contained a store-bought card with their signatures and nothing else personal. Maxwell did not even attempt a congratulation, instead immediately scanning the room and heading straight for the open bar. "That is Nathan over there," I said, pointing to where my fiancé was chatting with some friends. "Would you like to meet his parents?" "Perhaps later," my mother replied dismissively. "We have only just arrived." I swallowed my disappointment and excused myself to continue greeting other guests. Throughout the next hour, I kept glancing over at my family. They stayed mostly to themselves, my parents occasionally making polite but brief conversation with others, while Maxwell downed glass after glass of free champagne. At one point, I noticed them huddled together, speaking in hushed tones and glancing in my direction. My stomach tightened with familiar dread. I knew that look. They were discussing something about me, and it was never good when they did that. Alicia noticed too. "Are you okay?" she asked, following my gaze. "Your brother seems to be hitting the alcohol pretty hard." "When is he not?" I sighed. But tonight is not about them. I am not going to let them ruin this. The first half of the party proceeded beautifully. Nathan made a touching speech about how we met and fell in love, bringing many guests to tears. The string quartet played our favorite songs. The food was delicious, and everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves. For a brief shining moment, I allowed myself to hope. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe seeing me so happy surrounded by friends and loved ones who genuinely cared about me would help my parents understand what they had been missing all these years. That bubble of hope burst when my father approached me as I was speaking with some of my colleagues from the hospital. "Alexandra, may I have a word?" he asked, his tone formal and tight. "In private." A warning bell sounded in my head, but I nodded and excused myself. We stepped out onto the small balcony adjacent to the dining room. The cool evening air should have been refreshing, but instead it sent a chill down my spine. "The party is lovely," he began awkwardly, looking out at the city lights rather than at me. "Thank you," I replied, waiting for the other shoe to drop. After a moment of uncomfortable silence, he cleared his throat. "I heard from Nathan's father that you have quite a substantial wedding fund saved up." My guard immediately went up. "Yes, I have been saving for 5 years. $50,000 is a lot of money," he continued, finally turning to look at me. Something in his expression made my heart sink, especially for a wedding. "It is my money," I said carefully. "I saved it myself, specifically for this purpose." He nodded slowly, and I could almost see the calculation happening behind his eyes. "Your brother has been going through a difficult time lately." And there it was, the real reason for this conversation. "Maxwell lost his job 3 months ago." My father continued, his voice lowered, as if sharing a shameful secret. "The company downsized, and he was one of the first to go. He and Jessica are struggling to make their mortgage payments." I stood silent already, sensing where this conversation was heading. And he added, clearly saving what he thought was the most compelling point for last: "Jessica is pregnant. You are going to be an aunt, Alexandra. They are going to need all the help they can get." Under different circumstances, the news of a forthcoming niece or nephew might have been cause for celebration. But the calculating look in my father's eyes told me this announcement was strategic, not joyful. "I am sorry to hear about Maxwell's job," I said carefully. "But what does this have to do with me?" My father shifted uncomfortably, then straightened his shoulders. "We think you should give your wedding fund to your brother." Even though I had suspected this was coming, hearing the words spoken aloud still felt like a physical blow. "What?" $50,000 would make a world of difference to Maxwell right now, he continued, gaining confidence as he spoke. "It would help them keep their house, prepare for the baby." "And what about my wedding?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. "The money I spent 5 years saving." He waved his hand dismissively. "You and Nathan both have good jobs. You can save up again, or have a smaller wedding. Maxwell needs this money now." "Let me get this straight," I said, feeling heat rise to my face. "You want me to give Maxwell the money I scrimped and saved for years, working extra shifts and denying myself basic comforts so he can continue living in a house he cannot afford?" "Family helps family, Alexandra," my father said, his tone hardening. "Maxwell needs it more than you do right now." I laughed incredulously. Family helps family. Where was that sentiment when I was working my way through nursing school? When I was living on ramen noodles and working 20-hour days to make ends meet? "That was different," he said, frowning. "How? How was it different?" "You were always independent. You always figured things out." "Because I had to." My voice rose despite my best efforts to stay calm. "Because no one was going to do it for me." "You are being selfish, my father," said, his face reddening. "Your brother has a family to support." "And I do not matter. My dreams do not matter." I could feel tears threatening, but I refused to let them fall. "That money represents years of sacrifice, Dad. Years of planning for a day I have dreamed about since I was little." My mother must have been watching our interaction, because she suddenly appeared at the balcony door. "Is everything all right?" she asked, though her expression told me she already knew exactly what was being discussed. "Tell her, Margaret," my father said. "Tell her she needs to help her brother." My mother approached, placing a hand on my arm that was meant to seem affectionate, but felt manipulative. "Sweetheart, we know how hard you worked for that money. But think about your brother. Think about your little niece or nephew. Would not you want to give them the best start in life?" The emotional blackmail was so transparent it almost made me laugh. By bankrolling their parents' number? That is not how it works. "Alexandra, be reasonable," my mother urged. "This is not just about money. This is about being there for family." "Where were you when I needed family?" I asked quietly. "Where were you when I graduated nursing school, and no one showed up? Where were you when I got my first apartment and had to move everything myself, because everyone was busy with Maxwell's tennis tournament?" "You are bringing up ancient history," my father scoffed. "It is not ancient to me," I replied. "It is a pattern that has continued my entire life. And now you want me to give up my wedding fund to continue enabling Maxwell's irresponsibility." "Your brother is not irresponsible," my mother defended automatically. "He has had bad luck." "Bad luck does not explain the 5 jobs he has lost in 3 years," I countered. "Bad luck does not explain why he bought a house he could not afford, or why he continues to drive a luxury car he cannot make payments on." "So you will not help him?" my father demanded, his voice getting louder. "Your own brother." "I will not give him my wedding fund," I said firmly. "That money is for my wedding to Nathan. The wedding I have been planning and saving for since before I even met him." I noticed that other guests were beginning to glance our way, aware that something tense was unfolding on the balcony. Nathan caught my eye from across the room, his expression concerned. I gave him a small shake of my head, not wanting to involve him yet. "I cannot believe how heartless you have become, my mother," said her voice quivering with what I recognized as manufactured emotion. "We did not raise you this way." "You did not raise me at all," I replied softly. "I raised myself." That comment seemed to inflame my father further. "Now you listen here, young lady. We sacrificed everything for you kids." "For Maxwell," I corrected. "You sacrificed everything for Maxwell. I was an afterthought at best." Several guests were now openly watching our exchange. I could see Nathan making his way toward us, concern etched on his face. Maxwell, noticing the commotion, slipped out of his conversation and approached as well, his eyes narrowed. "What is going on?" Maxwell asked, looking between our parents and me. "Your sister refuses to help you," my father said, his voice loud enough that nearby conversations stopped. "She would rather spend $50,000 on flowers and cake than help her brother keep his home." Maxwell's expression darkened as he turned to me. "Seriously, Alex, you are going to let me lose my house when you are sitting on that kind of money?" "That money is for my wedding," I repeated, feeling like a broken record. "I worked hard for it. I saved it specifically for this purpose." "A wedding is one day," Maxwell sneered. "My house is my future." "And whose fault is it that your future is in jeopardy?" I asked. "Not mine." By now, a small crowd had gathered around us, including Nathan and his parents. The festive atmosphere had evaporated, replaced by uncomfortable tension. "What is happening?" Nathan asked quietly, moving to stand beside me. "My family thinks I should give my wedding fund to Maxwell." I explained, my voice steady, despite the storm of emotions inside me. "All of it." Nathan's eyebrows shot up. "The money you saved for 5 years? Why would they think that?" "Because Maxwell lost his job and might lose his house," I said. "Apparently that is more important than our wedding." "Of course it is," my father interjected. "A roof over their heads versus fancy centerpieces. How is this even a question?" Nathan's father stepped forward. "Richard, this is hardly the time or place for this discussion. Alexandra and Nathan are celebrating their engagement tonight." "Stay out of this," my father snapped. "This is a family matter." "Nathan is going to be her family," Harold replied calmly. And from what I can see, he is more supportive of Alexandra than you have ever been. The room grew impossibly quiet. My father's face turned a dangerous shade of red. You do not know anything about our family, he hissed. I know that Alexandra is an incredible young woman who has achieved everything through her own hard work, Harold replied. And I know that she deserves to be celebrated tonight, not attacked. No one is attacking her, my mother protested weakly. We are simply asking her to help her brother in his time of need. By giving him everything she has saved, Nathan asked incredulously. How is that reasonable? Because family comes first, my father exploded, his voice echoing in the now silent room. All pretense of privacy was gone. This had become a public spectacle. Give your $50,000 wedding fund to your brother right now, or this engagement is off, my father shouted, his face contorted with rage. The entire room froze. Even the servers stood motionless, trays suspended in mid-air. I felt as though I had been plunged into ice water, my body rigid with shock. You do not get to decide if my engagement is on or off. I finally managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady. That is between Nathan and me. As long as you are a Bennett, you will respect your family obligations, my father continued, jabbing a finger in my direction. And your first obligation is to help your brother. I am not giving Maxwell my money, I repeated firmly. Not now, not ever. Nathan squeezed my hand supportively, then addressed my father. Sir, with all due respect, you have no right to make demands about Alexandra's money, or our engagement. She worked hard for that savings, and we have plans for our future together. Plans? Maxwell interjected with a derisive laugh. What about my plans? My life is falling apart and she is worried about wedding favors and a fancy dress. That is not fair, Nathan said. Alexandra has supported herself her entire adult life. She deserves to use her savings as she chooses. Stay out of this, my father warned Nathan. This does not concern you. Anything that concerns Alexandra concerns me, Nathan replied calmly. My mother placed a hand on my father's arm, perhaps sensing that things were spiraling out of control. Richard, maybe we should discuss this another time. But my father shook her off, his eyes blazing with anger fixed on me. Alexandra, I am going to ask you one more time. Will you help your brother? Will you give him the money he needs? I took a deep breath and stood taller. That money is for my wedding. Maxwell's financial problems are not my responsibility. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. My father's face contorted with rage. He stepped forward, closing the distance between us in 2 strides. Then, before anyone could react, he raised his hand and slapped me hard across the face. The sound of the slap echoed in the silent room. Pain bloomed across my cheek, and I stumbled backward, caught by Nathan before I could fall. Gasps and cries of shock erupted from the guests. Tears sprang to my eyes, but they were tears of anger, not pain. As I straightened, I looked my father directly in the eyes and said in a voice that carried throughout the room, "You are about to get a surprise you will never forget." Nathan's arm was around me protectively. "Someone call security," he said, his voice shaking with barely controlled anger. "Now." Alicia was already on her phone, her face pale but determined. "I am calling the police," she announced. What just happened was assault. "Police?" my father scoffed, though a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. "Do not be ridiculous. This is a family matter." "You hit her in front of 50 witnesses, Harold stated flatly. "That is not a family matter. That is assault." My mother rushed forward, suddenly desperate to defuse the situation. "Alexandra, please. Your father did not mean it. He is just upset about Maxwell's situation. We can talk about this privately." "There is nothing to talk about," I said, my cheek still stinging. He made his choice. Now I am making mine. Maxwell pushed through the crowd, his expression a mixture of embarrassment and defiance. "Way to go, Alex. Always have to make everything about you. Do not you. Now you are getting Dad arrested because he lost his temper. Real nice. He hit me, I said simply. In what world is that okay? He was frustrated. You are being completely selfish. Refusing to give you $50,000 of my own money is not selfish, I replied. It is called having boundaries. My father, seeming to finally realize the seriousness of what he had done, took a step back. Alexandra, let us not be hasty. I apologize for losing my temper. It is too late for apologies, Nathan said, his arm still protectively around me. You crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. The restaurant manager appeared looking deeply concerned. Is everything all right? Security is on the way. No, everything is not all right, Nathan replied. This man, he pointed at, my father just assaulted my fiancée. We have called the police. This is absurd, my father protested. But I could see the first traces of fear in his eyes. I am her father. That does not give you the right to hit her, Eleanor said, stepping forward to stand beside me. Being a parent means protecting your child, not harming them. Security arrived, two men in black suits who positioned themselves near my father. Sir, we need you to step away and wait for the police to arrive, one of them said firmly. This is outrageous, my father blustered, but he made no move to resist. My mother clutched at my arm. Alexandra, please. Do not do this. He is your father. I gently removed her hand. A father who just slapped me in public, because I would not give my brother $50,000. I am done being the family doormat, Mom. Within minutes, 2 police officers walked into the room. My father froze in shock as they approached the reality of the situation, finally seeming to sink in. Can someone explain what happened here? Asked the first officer, a tall woman with short brown hair and a no-nonsense expression. Several voices began speaking at once, but the officer held up her hand. One at a time, please. Let us start with the alleged victim. Nathan kept his arm around me as I stepped forward. My name is Alexandra Bennett. That man is my father, Richard Bennett. During an argument at my engagement party, he slapped me across the face. And there are witnesses to this, the officer asked, looking around the room. Hands went up all around us. We all saw it, Alicia confirmed. It was unprovoked. Alexandra was simply refusing to give her brother her wedding savings. The officer nodded and turned to my father. Sir, I need to see some identification. My father fumbled for his wallet, his hands shaking slightly. This is a misunderstanding, he insisted. A family disagreement that got out of hand. Striking another person is assault, family member or not, the officer replied, calmly examining his driver's license. Richard Bennett, do you deny hitting your daughter? My father looked around the room, perhaps hoping for support, but found none. I lost my temper, he admitted finally. But she was being unreasonable, refusing to help her own brother. That does not justify physical violence, the second officer stated. Would you like to press charges, Miss Bennett? The female officer asked me. That was the moment, the point of no return. I felt the weight of decades of emotional manipulation, neglect, and unfairness on my shoulders. For years I had made excuses for my parents' behavior, had forgiven, without being asked, had accepted less than I deserved in the name of family peace. No more. Yes, I said clearly. I want to press charges. My mother let out a cry of distress. Alexandra, no. You cannot do this to your father. He did this to himself, I replied steadily. Maxwell pushed forward. This is insane. You are going to have Dad arrested over a slap, after everything they have done for you. What exactly have they done for me, Maxwell? I asked quietly. Name one thing. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, unable to come up with an answer. The officers asked my father to step outside with them. As they led him away, he looked back at me with an expression of utter disbelief, as if he could not comprehend that I would actually stand up to him. You will regret this, he said, but the threat sounded hollow. Once they were gone, the remaining guests stood in awkward silence. Nathan cleared his throat. I think it would be best if we ended the evening here. Thank you all for coming, and I apologize for the disruption." People began to gather their belongings, murmuring sympathetically to me as they left. Nathan's parents stayed close, providing silent support. My mother approached me once more, tears streaming down her face. "How could you do this? He is your father." "How could he hit me?" I countered. "I am his daughter." He was upset. People make mistakes when they are upset. "This was not a mistake, Mom. It was the culmination of a lifetime of emotional abuse and favoritism, and I am done accepting it." She shook her head in disbelief. "What will people think Richard Bennett arrested at his daughter's engagement party?" "I do not care what people think," I said truthfully. "I care about finally standing up for myself." Maxwell stood nearby, his expression dark. "So, that is it, Dad gets arrested. And you keep your precious wedding fund. Happy now." "This was never about the money, Maxwell," I said tiredly. "It was about respect, something this family has never shown me." "Oh, poor Alexandra," he mocked. "Always the victim." Nathan stepped forward. "I think you both should leave now." Gladly, Maxwell sneered. "Come on, Mom. Let us go deal with Dad's situation, since Alexandra is too busy playing the martyr." They left without another word, my mother casting one last tearful glance over her shoulder. The restaurant was nearly empty now, just Nathan, his parents Alicia, and a few close friends remaining. I sank into a chair, the adrenaline fading, leaving me shaky and exhausted. "Are you okay?" Nathan asked, kneeling beside me. "I do not know," I answered honestly. "I just had my father arrested." "He assaulted you," Harold reminded me gently. "You did the right thing." "It does not feel right," I admitted. "It feels terrible." "That is because you are a good person," Eleanor said, sitting beside me and taking my hand. "A person who wanted to believe the best of her family, even when they showed you their worst." Alicia brought me a glass of water. "I am so proud of you, Alex. That took incredible courage." "What happens now?" I asked, looking at Nathan. "Now we go home," he said simply. "And tomorrow we figure out the next steps together." As we left the restaurant, I glanced back at the beautiful space that should have been filled with joy and celebration. Instead, it had become the site of a family implosion, years in the making. But alongside the sadness and shock, I felt something else, a strange sense of liberation. For the first time in my life, I had refused to be diminished, refused to sacrifice my own happiness on the altar of family obligation. Whatever came next, I would face it, standing tall. The days following the engagement party incident passed in a blur of emotions. I moved through them like a sleepwalker going through the motions of daily life, while trying to process what had happened and what it meant for my future. The morning after the party, I woke to find 27 missed calls and 42 text messages on my phone. Most were from my mother, alternating between guilt trips. "How could you do this to your father?" and desperate pleas. "Please drop the charges, we are still your family." Some were from Maxwell, ranging from angry accusations to grudging attempts at reconciliation when the angry ones did not work. "You need to block them for a while," Alicia advised when I showed her the messages. "Give yourself space to breathe." I took her advice, silencing my phone and focusing on getting through each day. Nathan was my rock during this time, providing quiet support without pushing me to talk before I was ready. 3 days after the incident, we received a call from the district attorney's office. My father had been charged with simple assault, a misdemeanor. The prosecutor explained that, given his lack of prior criminal history, he would likely receive probation community service and be required to attend anger management classes. "Is that enough?" Nathan asked after I hung up the phone. "After what he did?" "It is not about punishment," I said, surprising myself with the realization. "It is about consequences. For once in his life, he is facing real consequences for his actions." A week later, my mother's sister, Aunt Judith, called me. We had never been particularly close, but she had always been kinder to me than my parents. "Alexandra, I heard what happened at your engagement party, she began cautiously. I wanted to check on you. I am okay, I said automatically. Just processing everything. There is something you should know, she continued, her voice lowering, about Maxwell's financial troubles. I tensed. What about them? It is not just that he lost his job. Richard and Margaret have been bailing him out for years. He has a gambling problem, Alexandra. A serious one. The revelation struck me like another slap. Gambling? Are you sure? Yes. He has run up tens of thousands in debts. Your parents have emptied most of their retirement savings helping him. That is why they were so desperate for you to give him your wedding fund. They have nothing left to give. Suddenly so many things made sense. The desperation in my father's eyes, my mother's tearful pleas, Maxwell's entitlement. They were not just playing favorites anymore. They were drowning. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because you deserve to know the truth, she replied. And because I want you to be careful. Desperate people do desperate things. After that conversation, I decided to seek professional help to process everything. I found a therapist specializing in family trauma, Dr. Rachel Winters, who helped me understand that what I had experienced throughout my life was not normal or acceptable. What you are describing is a classic golden child and scapegoat dynamic, she explained during our second session. Your parents created a family system where Maxwell could do no wrong and you could do no right. Your father's physical assault was just the most extreme expression of a pattern that has existed your entire life. Working with Dr. Winters helped me recognize the subtle ways my family had manipulated me over the years and gave me tools to establish healthy boundaries. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel angry about my treatment, not just sad or resigned but righteously furious. Meanwhile, Nathan and his parents continued to surround me with genuine love and support. Eleanor called me daily just to check in, and Harold offered practical advice about the legal proceedings. Their unwavering support showed me what real family was supposed to look like. 3 weeks after the incident, I received an unexpected visitor at our apartment. It was my father's sister, Aunt Patricia, whom I had not seen in years. I came as soon as I heard, she said, hugging me tightly. I cannot believe Richard did that to you. We sat in the living room, cups of tea growing cold, as she revealed a family history I had never known. Your father's father was the same way, she explained, controlling, quick to anger, playing favorites among his children. Richard was actually his scapegoat while I was the golden child. I always thought he would break the cycle, not perpetuate it. Why did no one ever tell me this? I asked. Our family does not talk about uncomfortable truths, she replied sadly. We pretend everything is fine until it explodes. I should have spoken up years ago when I saw how they treated you. I am sorry, Alexandra. The court hearing for my father's assault case was scheduled for a month after the incident. I dressed carefully that morning in a simple navy blue dress and low heels, wanting to project calm and confidence despite the storm of emotions inside me. The courtroom was smaller than I had imagined, with worn wooden benches and fluorescent lighting that buzzed faintly overhead. Nathan sat beside me, his presence steadying. My parents and Maxwell sat on the opposite side of the room, not looking in our direction. When my father's case was called, he stood with his attorney looking diminished, somehow smaller than the imposing figure who had dominated my childhood. The judge reviewed the case briefly, then asked if he wanted to make a statement. I deeply regret my actions, my father said, his voice lacking its usual confidence. I lost control in a moment of stress and did something unforgivable to my daughter. I take full responsibility. The judge sentenced him to 6 months of probation, 40 hours of community service, and mandatory anger management classes. It was exactly what the prosecutor had predicted. As we left the courtroom, I overheard a conversation that stopped me in my tracks. My father was speaking to someone I did not recognize, an older man with gray hair. I will get you the rest of the money next month, Frank, my father was saying, once we sell the cabin. This is the third extension, Richard, the man replied. I cannot keep covering for Maxwell's debts. My boss is asking questions. I know. We have already borrowed from Margaret's sister and my brother. We told them it was for Alexandra's wedding. Everyone was happy to contribute. My blood ran cold. They had been borrowing money from family members claiming it was for my wedding, all to cover Maxwell's gambling debts. I must have made a sound, because they both turned and saw me standing there, my father's face drained of color. Alexandra. I turned and walked away without a word, Nathan hurrying to catch up with me. What happened? He asked, concerned. They have been lying to everyone, I said, my voice shaking, borrowing money for Maxwell while pretending it was for my wedding. Nathan's expression hardened. Is there no limit to their manipulation? In that moment, I realized that the truth about my family was even worse than I had imagined. The favoritism, the emotional neglect, those I had learned to live with. But this level of deception felt like the final betrayal. I think I need to cut ties completely, I said, the decision crystallizing in my mind. At least for now. Nathan nodded. I will support whatever you decide. That evening, I wrote 3 letters, one to my father, one to my mother, and one to Maxwell. In each I explained that I would be taking a break from our relationship to focus on my healing. I did not know if the break would be temporary or permanent. That would depend on their actions going forward. I do not hate you, I wrote to my parents, but I cannot continue to be part of a family system that causes me harm. If you ever truly want to rebuild our relationship, it will need to be based on respect, honesty, and equality. After mailing the letters, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in my life, I was prioritizing my own well-being over my family's expectations. Are you okay? Nathan asked that night as we lay in bed. Not yet, I admitted, but I think I will be. 6 months passed, bringing with them the gradual healing that comes with time and distance. Spring turned to summer, and with it came a sense of renewal that mirrored my internal journey. The first month after cutting contact with my family was the hardest. I would wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing, questioning my decision. Was I being too harsh? Too unforgiving? But then, I would remember the years of emotional neglect, the public humiliation at my engagement party, the slap that still sometimes echoed in my dreams. Healing is not linear, Doctor, Winters reminded me during our weekly sessions. There will be days when you feel strong and certain, and days when you doubt yourself. Both are valid. Slowly the good days began to outnumber the bad. I threw myself into wedding planning, reclaiming the joy that had been temporarily stolen from me. Nathan and I decided to keep our original budget, but redirect some of the funds. I want to donate $10,000 to the Boston Domestic Violence Center, I told Nathan one evening, as we reviewed our wedding spreadsheet. It feels right. He squeezed my hand. I think that is a beautiful idea. Eleanor and Harold became even more involved in our wedding preparations, stepping into the role my parents would traditionally have filled. Eleanor came with me to choose my wedding dress, tears in her eyes, as I found the perfect one. You look absolutely radiant, she said, hugging me carefully to avoid wrinkling the delicate lace. Nathan is going to be speechless. Thank you for being here, I told her, fighting back my own tears. It means everything to me. Oh, Alexandra, she said, cupping my cheek gently. You are the daughter I always wanted. It is my privilege to share these moments with you. My chosen family expanded beyond Nathan and his parents. Alicia and her husband invited us for dinner regularly. My colleagues at the hospital checked in on me and offered support. Even Dr. Winters became something of a mentor, helping me recognize my own strength and resilience. You are building a life based on genuine connection, she observed during one of our later sessions. Not obligation or manipulation. That is remarkably healthy, especially given your background. 3 months after the court hearing, I received a letter from my father. Unlike the texts and voicemails I had received earlier and deleted without reading or listening, this seemed different. a single envelope with my name written in his familiar handwriting. I carried it around for days before finding the courage to open it. "Dear Alexandra," it began. "I have started this letter 100 times and torn it up each time, knowing no words can adequately express my remorse or undo the harm I have caused you." The letter continued for 4 pages, different in tone from anything I had ever received from my father. Gone was the authoritarian who demanded compliance. In his place was a man struggling to understand how he had become someone who would strike his own daughter. "The anger management classes and therapy have forced me to confront uncomfortable truths about myself and my own upbringing," he wrote. "I realize now that I have perpetuated a cycle of favoritism and emotional manipulation that was done to me as a child. That explanation is not an excuse, merely a painful recognition." He went on to acknowledge specific instances of unfairness throughout my childhood and early adulthood, showing an awareness I had never seen from him before. "I do not expect forgiveness," the letter concluded. "I have not earned it, but I want you to know that I am genuinely sorry for the pain I have caused you, and I respect your decision to create distance between us. If there ever comes a day when you might consider allowing me back into your life, even in a limited capacity, I will work to prove that I can be the father you always deserved." I shared the letter with Dr. Winters at our next session. "What do you think?" I asked. "Is it genuine, or just another manipulation?" She considered carefully. The specificity of his acknowledgments suggests genuine reflection. That said, real change takes time and consistent effort. One letter, no matter how eloquent, is not enough to prove transformation. "So what do I do?" "You do not have to do anything right now," she advised. "You can acknowledge receipt of the letter if you wish, but maintain your boundaries. True reconciliation, if it happens at all, would be a long, careful process." I decided to send a brief note in response. "I received your letter. I appreciate your apology, and am glad you are getting help. I still need space and time. Please respect that." My mother and Maxwell made no similar overtures. From what Aunt Judith told me, they were still enabling each other's worst tendencies, my mother making excuses for Maxwell's behavior, Maxwell taking advantage of her willingness to sacrifice for him. As our wedding day approached, I found myself thinking less and less about what I had lost, and more about what I had gained: a partner who valued me completely, in-laws who treated me with genuine affection, friends who stood by me through crisis, and most importantly, a newfound sense of self-worth that could not be shaken by others' opinions. Our wedding day dawned clear and bright, a perfect September Saturday. We had chosen a historic garden venue with stone pathways and a canopy of ancient oak trees. As I prepared in the bridal suite surrounded by Alicia and a few close friends, I felt a profound sense of peace. "Any last-minute jitters?" Alicia asked as she helped me with my veil. "None," I replied truthfully. "This feels exactly right." The ceremony was everything I had dreamed of. Intimate, meaningful, joyful. Harold walked me down the aisle, beaming with pride. Nathan's eyes filled with tears when he saw me. We wrote our own vows, promising to support each other's growth, respect each other's boundaries, and choose each other every day. During the reception, I was surprised when Aunt Patricia approached me with a small package. "This arrived for you yesterday," she said. "I debated whether to give it to you today, but I think you should have it." Inside was a vintage pearl hair comb with a note from my father. "This belonged to your grandmother. She would have wanted you to have it on your wedding day. No response expected. Wishing you all the happiness you deserve." I ran my fingers over the delicate pearls, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Then, I handed it to Alicia. "Would you help me put it in my hair?" "Are you sure?" she asked. I nodded. "It is part of my history. Not all of it is bad." As the evening progressed, I looked around at the gathering. Nathan's family, my friends, colleagues who had become like family, even a few distant relatives who had chosen to maintain relationships with me despite the family rift. There was so much love in that room, freely given, without conditions or expectations. Later, during our first dance, Nathan held me close and whispered, "How are you feeling, Mrs. Taylor?" "Complete," I answered, resting my head on his shoulder. Like everything that happened, led me exactly where I was meant to be. And it was true. The path had been painful at times, strewn with obstacles I never should have had to face. But it had brought me to this moment, to this man, to this version of myself that I had fought so hard to become. The next morning, as we prepared to leave for our honeymoon, I found myself thinking about forgiveness. Not the kind that erases consequences or pretends harm never happened, but the kind that releases its hold on your heart and allows you to move forward unburdened. I had not yet reached complete forgiveness for my family, but I had forgiven myself for the years I spent trying to earn love that should have been freely given, for accepting less than I deserved, for doubting my own worth. That, I realized, was the greatest gift. I could have given myself the permission to build a life based on mutual respect and genuine love, without the weight of generational dysfunction holding me back. As Nathan and I boarded our flight hand in hand, I looked forward to the journey ahead, not just our 2 weeks in Italy, but the lifetime we would build together, defined by our choices rather than our wounds. Sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the greatest freedom. And sometimes standing up for yourself is the most powerful act of self-love possible. What about you? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments below, and do not forget to like and subscribe for more stories about finding strength in challenging situations. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, you deserve relationships that honor your worth.